We the county championships, which is another big. It's county, but it's the whole of the UK still. Again in Newquay. The first year we were together as our crew, we won it by 18 boat lengths. So after 1 minute 40, we were ahead. And like, it wasn't really a race. It was such an anticlimax to
Yeah.
like 6 months worth of training. I mean, that sounds really like obviously the other crews are really good as well, but we were, yeah, you want a race. That's what you're
Hmm.
there for. You want the competition. So yeah, but the amount of training that is needed for an amateur sport, like, I mean, we don't even have access to physiotherapists, nutritionists, nothing. It costs a fortune to keep yourself going with work, with family life. You know, that I had we traditionally the club's not very good at thinking about anything other than on the water and
Hmm.
on the rowing machine. So we started doing weights together, strength and conditioning, but we pay for all of that ourselves, and then diet and nutrition. We soon realised we can't sustain that level of training without actually thinking about what we're eating. So, um, and it's a really quite a rural area down here, and there's a couple of farmers' wives and daughters that are in the crew, and trying to get them to sort of think about their diet when everyone's so busy, and they're like, yeah, we that's what we eat. Like, I'm not doing anything different, and I need cake, while I'm on the farm or whatever. And you're like,
Everybody needs cake.
yeah, we do, but not every day.
Yeah.
And not just before training. So yeah, so we started getting a lot more advice, and it definitely helped, especially on race day. Um, Controlling our nutrition on race day, sort of, we realised it was a nice learning curve for us all to go through together. Um, so yeah, then they think the whole club thinks about it a lot more now. And sort of sports massage, and we've got a good physio that we can go and use, because it is quite demanding, on your body, really, like training every day with work and stuff. So um, yeah, it's a very repetitive movement, so it's not impact. It's not like running. You don't get those kind of injuries, but I suffer with tendonitis quite often. So
Yeah.
just from repetitive, and that's a tricky one to control, really. So but it's all part of the fun, really. Like, it's yeah, I love it. It's another good distraction from everything else. You go and have a row on the river after work,
Yeah.
and you just forget about everything else, and you get in the zone.
How's the like the culture of the sport? So I the reason I ask this is that so episode 40 with Evan Pardi, which as we're talking is not out yet, but will be by the time your episode's out. Um, he is now a pro off-road triathlete, but like he grew up rowing, and he talked about like he's used to this very like gentlemanly culture of the sport, not like this kind of, I'll say, almost brutish like American sport culture that's like trash talking everybody. It's more like you race and then everybody's still friends after, like before and afterwards. There's no like
Yeah,
hard feelings. So like, is the culture the same in gig rowing, or what have you experienced?
yeah. So um, the history of the sport means there's a lot of tradition with
Mm,
it. So um, not, and unfortunately it is actually kind of dying out a little bit, which is a real shame, because so like singing, going to the pub and singing sea shanties, is a huge thing, because it goes part and parcel with those crews, what they used to do historically.
mm,
Um, and it's a real Cornish thing, sea shanties. So there's quite a lot of singing with it on the social scene, but it's not the rowing like the sort of Cambridge, Oxford in the UK, river rowing.
right.
I've had a go at that, and they are way too straight laced, and too serious. Like, And they think it's absolutely amazing rowing on flat water in a straight line. And I'm like, need waves.
Okay.
Like, it's too two-dimensional on a river. So, but the politeness about it, like, I mean, I think is a bit of a British thing as well, because like rugby is our equivalent of like, you know, your American football and stuff,
Right.
and rugby players are very polite to each other afterwards, very respectful of competition. Um, so I think in the UK generally you just don't get that kind of vibe with it. I mean, we know everybody off on the circuit. Like we'll, there's some people are friends from it because they've grown up rowing together on the circuit, but then the rest of us, we just, if I'm down in Penzance for work, I might message one of them and be like, oh, go for a coffee or something. So we see each other outside of rowing, and when we're on the beach we chat, catch up, but we do not talk about training, we do not talk about what we're doing in the boat. And when we get in the boat, they are our absolute worst enemies.
Save it all for the rowing.
And there's games as well. Like, when Falmouth first came back, they've got a varnished boat, and they're all quite big girls. They wear black. So they just practiced their start before the start, and they just rowed straight at us and then braked, turned around and went off. And they just trying to intimidate us. But it didn't work. We won. So it's fine. So yeah, it's kind of like a bit of mind games, but on the beach we're all chatty. I mean, in the major championships you do avoid each other. You don't go and speak to each other too much at the major championships because there's just so much, like any sport at any level, you've put so much effort in. You just don't, you want to be in your own zone. We're a team sport, more so than, I used to play field hockey, English field hockey at university, and it's a team of 11, and that's a team sport, but it's nothing like rowing because you have to be mirror images of each other. You have to be identical. You have to be doing the same thing all the time. So you just end up so close, and you just don't want other people. I mean, even in our own club, because the club's quite big, we've got quite a few teams. But we have to just sort of remove ourselves from everybody else's racing, and concentrate on our own preparation and stuff. So yeah.
So I want to give plenty of time because I'm sure there's a lot you can talk about. I want to talk about your research because obviously it seems pretty impactful to kind of how let's say humanity exists right now. You're doing research into litter in marine ecosystems. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I specialize in the smaller plastic marine litter. So we call it microplastics. So specifically anything less than 5 millimeters, but actually mostly the stuff that you can't see. So yeah, tricky. It's not the easiest of subject areas, but so Plymouth in the UK, my supervisor for my PhD, Richard, is called Richard Thompson, and he's kind of renowned in the field of research. He wrote a paper in 2004, and he was the first person to use the term microplastics, so he kind of coined the phrase. And then he's been involved with an awful lot of research since then. And we've got a fairly good team now here at Plymouth. Some new lab facilities we've just have built. So yeah, and Plymouth as a whole, there's a couple of marine institutes here that deal with microplastics and marine litter, and it's quite a hub for it really worldwide. We've been doing it for quite a few years down here, and we've had some good impactful papers in the field. So yeah, I mean, I started 5 years ago with microplastics when I came back to do my master's. So I graduated in marine biology in 2004, tried to get some work, but everybody wanted 2 years experience, and I couldn't afford to volunteer for 2 years,
Right.
not get paid. So I sort of fell out of it really. I got a job, and then set up my own business, doing something very random. Designed and then got manufactured hand-painted picture tiles and got them made in China and then shipped them over here and sold them wholesale and online as well. So I did that for a couple of years, built the business up and then sold it in 2015 to come back and do my master's. I always knew I wanted to come back into marine science, but you have to be prepared to work for free for a bit, really, before you can. Academia is a bit of a tough one to get into. So I did my master's, and updated my knowledge with the microplastics because it wasn't around when I did my degree. And I've just stayed in the field really because Plymouth is so good at it. So we've just got world-leading researchers here. So it's kind of stupid to move away from it at the moment here. But my master's project was looking at ingestion in wild fish larvae. So I wanted to see if fish larvae out of Plymouth had any signs of ingestion of microplastics, and they did, a small percentage. And then after my master's, I went on a research cruise for PML, Plymouth Marine Laboratory, and I went from the UK down to Antarctica on a ship, measuring microplastics in the water and also in zooplankton, so the small animals in the sea, the bottom of the food chain, to see if they had any ingestion of microplastics as well. So I did that for a couple of years, kind of a bit paid, a bit not, and then got my PhD 18 months ago, which is so PhDs in the UK work where the academic will get funding for a project and then they get a student in to do that project. So you have a brief that you're supposed to follow as much as you can, but obviously the student's got to want to do the work, so you can change it a little bit and make it your own project. So I've done microplastics for about 5 years.
So when you're measuring microplastics, is a predominant amount of research looking at the impact on wildlife, or is it just saying, hey, let's go take samples in this particular area versus that particular area, and then trying to measure the concentration of them, or is there any, I guess, large push in a particular area, or is it kind of scattered?
It's pretty scattered, to be honest. So institutes tend to sort of specialize in different areas, but there's been a lot of research sort of stating where microplastics and also larger plastics are in the environment and what animals have ingested it. But I feel like now we're kind of at the stage where we know, unfortunately, that plastics are just about everywhere. And most animals will ingest them if they're susceptible to ingesting them. So it depends on their feeding strategy, or it depends on where they are. If they're in an area of high concentration of plastics, then of course, that it's easy to mistake a piece of plastic for food. So, but the other major part of the research has been trying to determine what level of harm that will actually inflict on individuals and on populations and on ecosystems, which is really tricky. So that's done experimentally. You can't do that in the wild. So ecotox experiments mainly in labs, but the trouble is trying to reflect exactly what's going on in the environment is very difficult. So if you're going to feed an organism microplastics, you need to make the microplastics or buy them in, and most people buy them in. So they're virgin plastics out of a packet, which is not like the plastics that they're experiencing in the environment that have been there for potentially years, and have all the associated contaminants from the water, but also a biofilm of algae and bacteria and possibly viruses. So this sort of really sort of trying to find out the actual level of harm is very difficult. So, most ecotox experiments will use doses that are increasing up until a point where they will inflict, you'll see the harmful level. But these levels for plastics don't exist in many places, thankfully. We don't think. So they're just not very realistic at the moment. And you want to age the plastics as well. So maybe, try and put them out in the sea for a bit and then back and then feed them to an organism. But that's difficult as well. So yeah, we're still in sort of fairly early stages with knowing exactly what level of harm at individual level. And then modelers are now able to help ecologists scale up results to look at, whether there's going to be an effect at population level on ecosystems. And specifically in the UK, we're looking at an ecosystem services approach quite a lot now. So if you want to sort of legislate against any of this, sort of government here really wants to know the value of the damage of plastics. So we need to put a price on everything. So ecosystem services are really important. So for instance, if wastewater is quite harmful, with got a lot of plastics in it, and is going out into an estuary where there's fish farms or shellfish farms, and those, say, mussels are ingesting plastics, and it's harming them, and they're higher mortality rate in the mussel farm than the actual physical monetary cost of that. So there's a lot of work going on with that, and then also the sources of plastics, because we still aren't particularly sure where exactly they're coming from and at what levels. And there's a split between, obviously, macroplastics. You have the potential to trace those a little bit easier because they might be a whole, still intact plastic product that's recognizable to us. But microplastics are usually fragmented bits of larger plastic, or we find an awful lot of fibers in a natural environment. That's my main work. So when we wash our clothing that's synthetic, so especially for people that do a lot of sport and wear a lot of synthetic clothing, all of the fibers shed, a lot of fibers shed during the process of washing, and that goes through into wastewater. And although wastewater treatment is very good at removing particulates, because that's what it's designed to do, the sheer volume of water that's going through wastewater treatment means that there's still millions of particles going out into the marine environment for us, because obviously the UK is an island, so most of our effluent goes straight out into the sea, especially in the southwest.
Right.
So yeah, it's a really, really complicated research area, because also, like, in the UK, that people are already jumping to wanting to know what the solutions are.
Mm-hmm.
It's great that there's a lot of media interest with it now.
Right.
It's really, really good. But the problem is that we don't really have the answers that people are asking the questions to. So we still need an awful lot of research to know, really, what we can do to minimize impact, and what we can do to minimize the amount of plastics going into the ocean in the first place.
Yeah, and seeing that you said people are already asking the questions, that's exactly where my head is. Where it's like, okay, I think we can recognize that this is a problem, but then you said, like, the government wants to put a price tag on it and say, well, what's the dollar cost of this, or pound cost of this problem, and then does the amount that it costs to fix it, is it worth what it's like? Okay, but yeah, my head goes to, like, there's the ocean cleanup project that's trying to work on removing macroplastics, and I'd love your opinion on that. I've heard kind of back and forth whether people think it's worthwhile or not. But yeah, microplastics obviously being a much more troublesome thing, just because how do you sieve and filter the ocean of the planet, like, down to such a small degree? You
Well,
know,
that's not. I mean, they go smaller as well because we've also started research now on nanoplastics. So,
right.
but they're at the moment there's no way of analytically detecting them. So you can't. It's not easy to find a. You can't visualize a particle very easily, and you can't detect chemically that it's there either if it's that small. So that's a huge problem. But problem with plastic is it's so durable,
Mm.
even in its micro nano phase, it's still there and it's still potentially harmful to an appropriately sized organism. So I mean, in our view, within the science community here in Plymouth, we kind of feel like we need to stop the tap of plastics rather than be cleaning it up in the ocean. Like, it's not really the answer to say it's okay, we'll clear it up.
Mm-hmm.
So the ocean cleanup is a good, um, it's a good sort of thing for media to grab hold of. But
Right.
um, my personal opinion is that that really should have been set up outside of harbours.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, it's not really that practical because of shipping, but um, you know, we need to stop it going out into the ocean in the first place. And the cost of going out and actually collecting the rubbish that they're collecting is huge. There's big, it's a long way out into the ocean. So,
Right.
and, in theory, it's a good idea, but actually, those things need to be in marinas and outside of effluent sites.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it would be nice to have that amount of money invested in washing machines with filters and fabric weave technology, and trying to stop fiber shedding and trying to develop more renewable fibers like bamboo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it is very high profile, so it's good that it's getting a message out that there's a problem.
Yeah. Well, it's actually something. It's good to talk to you because it's something I think about as the owner of a company that produces skincare products. I often end up using, we have plastic bottles or like
Mm.
plastic deodorant type tubes, and I look for, can I find like a paper equivalent or something that's biodegradable? And it's like there are people working on it to make something that's equivalent to the durability of plastic in terms of product transportation, that kind of things. But the few things that are available are so expensive comparatively that, like, economically, I can't use it. But at the same time, I'm like, it's also like you can't not use it too, because then you're making this negative impact on the environment. So it's like I definitely, on a personal level, struggle with that as owner of a company that produces products that uses plastics, and I think about how pervasive plastics are in just at least the American economy in general, where it's like you go to the store, you want to get anything, it's probably in a plastic package.
Yeah, yeah,
One time use plastic package. It's
yeah.
very tough to get anything that's not. And even like so, as a hobby of mine, I make small batch ice cream, and I buy cream from a local dairy, which comes in glass bottles. So they reuse the glass bottles, but it has a plastic cap.
Mm.